subspecies name, not a species name. The reason is, at the beginning, between here, is going to write enterica, subspecies, enterica, typhimura, and the people just skip that. Okay, so first thing I want to mention. Second, Salmonella typhimura and Salmonella typhi are different. Salmonella typhi, if we want to talk about typhi, this is a story about Mary. If you heard about this before in other classes, that's called Typhi Mary. This is a lady originally from New York City, New York State. That's back in 1910s to 1930s. This lady originally is a bookkeeper. And one day she had flu-like symptoms. She go to work. 10 people surrounded her, either infected, contagious, or died. Then she changed the job, become a cook in a restaurant. And the people surrounded her either died or infected. Herself is always have a mild symptom. Later on, NYPD have to quarantine her. And the rest of the life kind of like isolated or like in a prison. She died like in the 1960s because of the lung disease infection. And in 23, Stanford University find in her spleen area, there is a macrophage. And the macrophage is hiding the Salmonella typhi there. That's why she's a carrier with the Salmonella typhi and only have a mild symptom by herself, but the people who surrounded her got contaminated all the time. This is a typical asymptomatic carrier of the disease before we talk about COVID-19 asymptomatic. It's a very famous story in the medical history and the microbiology history. It's called Typhi Mary. So I will print it out the story for you to read next week, Tuesday. And it's a very interesting story to talk about that. So just want to let you know, Typhi and Typhimura are different. Typhi most of the time is a human pathogen. Typhimura is a pathogen in poultry, egg, and all the other animals, typically in poultry products. Salmonella is a strict one for the poultry products. FSIS, the USDA FSIS, United States Department of Agriculture Food Safety Inspection Service, is right now put on zero tolerance for breaded and stuffed chicken nuggets. And poultry carcasses is only allowed 10.4% of the positive for Salmonella. Okay, so it's a big risk for poultry and egg. Vibro. Vibro will cause chlorella. Usually, it's a water diarrhea. You're going to lose lots of water. In usually about like 3 hours, you look like 10 liters. 3 gallon probably. Even more than that. So finally, you're like dehydrated. So if people have a Vibro, you have to rehydrate first before you use antibiotics. This usually is jellyfish and those seafood. Shigella. Okay, we want to mention about that. Shigella most of the time is happened in daycare. So the kids go there, go to the restroom. They don't wash their hands very well. The daycare teacher didn't wash very well. Then they go to touch this, touch that, and they transfer. So it's a daycare kids. Same as the E. coli, O157H7 will generate Shigella toxin. Campylobacter jejuni, we mentioned about same as Salmonella, is one of the pathogens for poultry. We will talk about more detail later on when we go to exam 4, talk about poultry processing and the micro safety. Okay, so we just very simple here. It is a microallophilic bacteria. And I mentioned it's very ironic, very difficult to grow in the lab. However, it's a big risk for the poultry industry. E. coli, there is a lot we talk about. we are talking about is E. coli in the lab is a normal bacteria. We could talk about the E. coli 9037 is a beneficial bacteria, but most of the time we talk about O157H7 is a foodborne pathogen. And other than that, we have a E. coli invasive pathogenic and a hemorrhagic. There is a 4 different types of the E. coli. Okay, so traveler's diarrhea. And E. coli also is a #1 pathogen called urinary tract infection. So Uro E. coli is also important. Okay, Yersinia. Yersinia causes enterocolitis, rarely sourced from the milk. I doubt that. I tell you where it comes from. It's from pig, swine, chitlings. And you don't eat that. Pig chitlings. If you go Chinese restaurant in Pittsburgh, Forbes Avenue, you can buy $10 for one large pot of the chitlings. Tastes really good, it's soft. But I tell you the risk is Yersinia. United States no concern about that because chitlings usually it's a byproducts. They make it like a casing of the sausage, not really eat it. We eat it back in China, so that's only the concern is for the swine chitlings. Listeria monocytogenes, we will mention about that later on. It's for the milk, cheese, and ready-to-eat foods, like hot dogs, ham, turkey breast, because this pathogen can grow in the refrigerated temperature, can grow with high salt, can grow with vacuum package. So it's a very special foodborne pathogen. We'll talk about that. Vibro Hemolytic, shellfish, same as a Vibro chlorogram. Clostridium perfringens difficile, we already mentioned about that. So here you see Clostridium difficile, we already put it underneath the foodborne and the waterborne infection. So we also think about it's a food infection. It's a new emerging foodborne pathogen. Last thing I want to mention, all these organisms, if it's a food infection, is self-limited. So what that means, if you eat undercooked ground beef, you get E. coli O157H7. You're not going to transfer to the other students. It's called self-limited. But Haemophilus influenza, Corynebacteria diphtheria, Streptococcus pneumoniae, all those will be transferred to the others. That's not self-limited. Okay, so that's a major difference. Foodborne pathogen, most of them are self-limited. This is something we already mentioned. Sucrose plaque formation. What happened is, there is only 2 ways we'll cause the decay of the teeth. Number 1 is genetics. Number 2 is just diet habits. Some people like to eat rice. Like I have rice almost every meal. You have a rice there. The rice is composed by sugar. So you have a dextrin. Dextrin is a glucose. Then on your teeth, you have a Streptococcus mutans. That's Viridium streptococcus in oral cavity. And the mouth environment, that's microenvironment, is anaerobic to microaerophilic. So what happened? Fermentation will happen. So then the fructose will be going through fermentation, generate lactic acid. And in that acid environment will be caused decay of the cements. We call it demineralization of the enamel. That's caused the decay. So the teeth is very simple. You eat rice, the sugar is there. If you don't do a good hygiene, the sugar will fill the biofilm. And then what happened? The bacteria are going to come in, stick there. And then in the low oxygen environment, they go through fermentation. They generate lactic acid. The acid environment will cause the decay of the enamel because of demineralization. It causes the tooth decay. So another thing is happening is that the lemon juice or lemonade, if you drink lemon juice or lemonade all the time, it also causes tooth decay because of the acid. Okay, so that's the sucrose and the plaque formation. Chloral, we just mentioned about the chloral, gram-negative bacteria, common shaped. Shellfish is a natural reservoir. Is toxin is chloral. What happens is right here. When you go here, this is rumen, balanced of sodium. When you chlorine Vibro chloral there, what happened? Enterotoxin activated. Activated what? This guy I mentioned a couple of times. CAMP. and this AMP goes to CAMP, is need CAMP aldolase. Cyclase, aldenate cyclase, and cyclase. When this cyclase happens, AMP is not go to the, we have ATP, we will have a CAMP. It's like some money locked in your pocket. So what happened? All of these chloride is blocks the uptake of the sodium. And what happened? Because here the concentration is very high. All the water gonna go in through the intestinal areas, the lumen areas, then you have an excessive water come out, cause diarrhea. So what happened for chloral? Rice water, dehydration. So what you have to do is rehydration and antibiotic therapy. Okay, that's what happened for the chloral. Okay, that's all we have. We'll talk about the sexually transmitted disease next week, Tuesday. Okay.